So first of all, I want to congratulate Stacy on a great kickoff to this presentation 2 weeks ago, because I think she did a great job of setting it up and sharing the inspiration for why we went down this path so that everybody could maybe get a Cliff Notes version of how VI is structured. We all have the data at our fingertips with the Constitution and well, all of that data that nobody, and the affiliation agreement that nobody really has time to look at. And I have to say, when I was Chief Barker of local SoCal, same problem here. I was so focused on what the tent was doing that I had little time to see what Variety International was doing. And it's important to get a sense of what both organizations, both levels of the organization, how they operate. So with no further ado, since we have a lot to cover in this short period of time, and feel free to interrupt and ask questions. And Sharon, I'm going to ask you to help me identify if people have questions, because I may be so focused on what I'm saying that I ignore that. So please help me identify if people have questions. Okay. So as we set up this deck in 3 sections. The first section, mission, vision, promise, core values, objective, history, and impact in core programs. Stacy did a phenomenal job launching all of that. The second section, we repeat the mission, vision, promise, core values again, just to kind of set the stage. But I will be focusing on how we are organized, what are the key points in our Constitution, especially on how the board and the leadership of the organization is elected. We'll go a little over financials. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that because we provide that information to you around prior to the AGM, within the first 6 months of the close of the fiscal year. And a little bit over the affiliation agreement. Again, that's under review. And then, of course, we'll spend a little bit of time on how the committees of Variety International are structured. And so one, how we try and coordinate our efforts and hopefully engage you. And then, of course, we will have section 3 in 2 weeks, and Steve Zulke, who's on this call, will be presenting that and going over those items. So continuing on, section 1, section 2, this is where we are, and we're going to start with, here's the vision, mission, and core values. I did want to point out that the core values were really developed about a year ago. It's not something we've had over our 90-year history. So these are what we landed on, and of course, if there are any improvements that can be made or different thoughts from the membership, we would of course love to hear that. And then our promise and our objective, and all of this is in the deck. So I am going fast, but all of it is available to you, not only in this recording, but in the original deck that was circulated. So with that, we're going to go over our organization. And again, my portion of the presentation is a little dry, so I'm throwing in a few quotes here once in a while to hopefully spice it up a bit. So I found this interesting. To be successful, the first thing to do is fall in love with your work. And I know you've heard that before, because if you love what you're doing, you really don't go to work every day. You just go find your passion. And hopefully, that's true for me with Variety International. I've been with it now about 30 years or more, and I keep doing it because it's my passion. So here is the organization. The parent company is Variety International. Underneath that are 3 regions, although the board does have the ability to create additional regions if they feel there is a need. We did have the Central Asia, Middle East region at one point in time, but with only 2 tents in that region, we decided it would be more efficient to keep it down to these 3. We do have 2 country associations, US and Australia. And then under all of that, we have the individual tents. Do we have any questions on this basic structure? Okay, there are some thoughts that maybe the association and the regions are too many layers. And so we are considering how to adjust that so there aren't as many layers. But again, the task force is working on that as well. With regard to the board and how the board is structured, you have the president, that's me. We do have a position for vice president, and that position is elected by the board members and fills in when the president is not available. We currently do not have anyone that has the capacity to take on this role, so it remains empty. But we do have 13 directors in total. We ran out of space, as you can see. Howard Blank, poor Howard, he's a little lower than the rest of us. But we did run out of space. So we have 13 board members, of which we have 7 at-large members, and then we have 5 members that are determined by either the president of the region, the chair of VICF, or the advisory council chair. And then staff members, I left all three in there, although Sharon, thank you, Sharon, for being our one and only staff member. The other two positions, our executive director and our admin, are currently vacant. And then I did add committees in here because I think it's important, and we'll go over this in more detail. So right now we have about 8 committees, and although it looks like more, under fundraising, we have both a subcommittee of Gold Hearts and a subcommittee of, I have to read it, I can't see it, Golden Link, which is the company that chose to do some masks and wanted to return money to us. We also have 2 others, like we have, well, I'll get into that when we get to committees. Any questions on this basic structure? I'm going to try and take a breath now and again, just in case he wants to say something other than me. Okay, so now we're going to take a little time and go over some of the elements of the Constitution. This is a legal document, so sometimes you have to read a paragraph 2 or 3 times to really comprehend what it's telling you. And it is a work in progress always. So this Constitution was developed and voted in 2015. Prior to that, we had a Constitution that was probably a bit of a patchwork, because as things change and evolve, you add new clauses, you revise it. There was an effort maybe 5 years before, so maybe 2010, to kind of go through the Constitution and smooth it out. But then we meaning the membership, voted in this version of the Constitution, which provided for regions. So Constitution, as I just said, was put into place in 2015. And I like this quote from Diane Sawyer. I think the one lesson I have learned is that there is no substitute for paying attention. So this document is our guiding force. And if there are changes needed, it is up to the membership to kind of bring them to the board as far as what changes you want us to make, and be happy to consider them and bring them back to the membership for vote. But we must know how we're structured in order to make an impact and improving how we do. So membership, every 10 is a member. There are 2 classes, and this is mostly for voting rights. Class 1, every 10 is class 1, they get 1 vote. And who votes is dependent on the 10. It can be the executive director, it can be the president of the board, it can be whoever you designate to cast your vote. Class 2, there was when we were developing this Constitution, there was an interest from the 10th that raised a good deal of money to have an extra vote. So there was a clause put in here that if you net over $4 million, and that is US dollars, because the strength of the dollars around the world differ, that you can get a second vote. Now, last year, nobody reached this milestone. In the past, I think maybe there's been 2 or 3 votes, 2 or 3 tenths that have qualified for this. But it's not consistent. And with COVID, I think netting $4 million is actually a huge challenge. So that's where we are in the voting. With regard to what the makeup is of our board, as you showed in the organizational chart, there's a president that is elected by the membership. There are at-large directors, minimum of 4, maximum of 7, that are elected by the membership. And then the president of each region sits on the board. The chair of the advisory council and the chair of the International Children's Fund sit on the board. So there's a potential, unless we increase the number of regional councils, there is a potential right now for 13 directors, and we currently have 13 directors. Now, going forward, it's likely we will hold a seat or 2 open, so that if, for instance, somebody has to resign, or we lose a treasurer and we need a specific skill set on the board, we may ask, like we may only, I think 12 was the magic number originally, and this time we had 13. If I'm going too fast, just let me know. I'm happy to slow down. Sent in good standing. This has come up, especially in the voting. Like when our AGM meeting in May, there were a few tenths that attended the AGM that were not able to cast a vote. And a lot of that is because they didn't send in what was required of Variety International. So for instance, basic of attending good standing is that they're paying their dues in full and on time, that they have provided their financials that VI asks them for in a timely manner, and we have them for the past 5 years, audited if required. And then if we're not using the portal right now, but if we were, all of the portal was completed and on time. So basically, that's the basis of it. Obviously, compliance with the license agreement is important. Maintaining brand guidelines and style guide requirements is important. And then we would like every tent to participate in one of the key programs, which Stacy went over the last presentation: Variety Care, Variety Freedom, and Variety Future. And then this last one was added because the committee that put together Variety International 101 felt it was really important that any new employees and even current employees, volunteers, board members, get some kind of tutorial on what Variety International is. Even though their focus is local, it's important to know the bigger organization that you're part of. And so that last check mark, onboarding and training, was a result of Variety International 101. What I would like to say is the Constitution does, it says at top, the Constitution defines a tent in good standing is that they've met all conditions mandated by Variety International. So this is the current list Variety International has put together for a tent in good standing. We have asked the task force, since they are currently working on other things, to review this with the members to make sure that they agree with that. Some tents struggle, can't pay dues, still want to vote, understand that. Other tents want VI to take more action, like close a tent down if they're not complying. Well, we don't really want to close tents if we don't have to. But if the membership ultimately tells us that we need to be stricter with tents, then tents can't really argue because it's the members that have come up with that. So Variety International is always taking kind of a cautious approach, but we'd be more than happy to do what the members want us to do. We are here to serve you. Any questions on tents in good standing? Okay, moving right along. So elections, and I thought this from Abigail Van Buren a long time ago: if we could sell our experiences for what they cost us, we'd all be millionaires. Ain't that the truth? Okay, and perhaps we're millionaires in experience, not necessarily cash. So for elections, every tent has a vote. They must meet the standard of a tent in good standing. Majority of tents is required for quorum. And then, of course, we want 100% participation is always our goal. Now, I would like to spend a little time explaining the difference between an in-person conference and a Zoom conference. So obviously in person, those people who are physically attending, they're the ones that have the vote. In Zoom, the same is true. There's more opportunity for everybody to attend in Zoom. To reach a quorum or to pass a vote, you must have the majority of those attending the meeting. It doesn't mean that you need a majority of the tents attending. If for some reason in an in-person conference or Zoom, we only have 20 tents attending and we have 44 altogether, the majority of the 20 passes a vote. That's how the Constitution is written. Any questions on that? Because I know sometimes you need to have 50% attend, and then that majority would carry the vote. But that's not how our Constitution is written. Okay, I'll move on. Elections. So the board of directors, these positions, the president and the at-large directors, are elected by the membership. The president is a separate nomination, and the board members are a separate nomination. Originally, the new Constitution proposed that the membership elect the board and then the board elects the president. The membership didn't like that. The membership wanted to have control on who their president was. So that's how we are structured now. So when we call for nominations, we're calling for nominations for the president, specific job role, and every other director that the seats are available. Now, even if we have 4 to 7 seats, it doesn't mean all of those seats are available for every election, because you obviously we elect them every 2 years and they serve a 2-year term. So our purpose is to try and have the at-large members elected every year, but only half of them. And the president, of course, serves for 2 years and then steps down and a new president comes on board. There wasn't anyone ready, willing, able, or nominated to take on the role of president after my first 2-year term was completed. So I did agree to take on another 2 years if that was the only solution. So I am nominated and elected for a 2-year term. If we have somebody willing to step up in May, I'm happy to step down. It's a big job, and I think 2 years is plenty of time, but I'm happy to serve if that's what I'm called to do. So we usually call for nominations about 2 months prior to the AGM. Then if we have more nominations than we have seats available, a ballot will go out about 30 days prior to the AGM. And if it's an in-person AGM, we'll do the election at the AGM. And if it's virtual, we'll try and wrap up the voting in advance of the AGM rather than during the AGM, so we can share results when we're at the AGM. And if we have nominations that meet or are less than the seats available, there is no election. It's an automatic. There's no vote. It's an automatic election with those that were nominated. Any questions there? Regional councils. Same process for regional councils. So anyone in the organization can nominate somebody for a regional council. That means somebody in the US can nominate somebody in Australia to sit on the Australian Regional Council. However, when it comes to voting, those in the region vote for those members on the council. So North America votes for North America, Australia or South Asia Pacific votes for Asia Pacific, and England or Europe votes for the European members. There is a requirement to have a minimum of 5 members sit on each council and a maximum of 11. If we don't have 5 members on a council because there weren't enough nominations, then it is the obligation of the VI board to appoint a minimum of 5 members to the council. And then once that council is formed with at least 5 members, those council members determine who will be the president of the council and sit on the international. Any questions on that? In North America, we've had a full council since its inception, which is fantastic. In England, we've always met our minimum of 5. And in Asia Pacific, there has been a struggle with getting enough people on the council. So the board was required to appoint members this last session. Well, we had to do that with England too, for Europe. Okay. With regard to advisory council, the advisory council was set up to take advantage of those long-term members of Variety that have extensive knowledge of what has happened in the past and is still very much engaged with the organization going forward. So this was established to take advantage of all that knowledge so the board could tap into them. So all of the past presidents of Variety International are appointed to the advisory council for life. Of course, they can turn down that appointment, but they are appointed for life. The council can be a total of 30 members. So if there are other persons that are long-term members that maybe have engaged with Variety on all levels but haven't served as president, we can still appoint them. This is done by the board. The membership does not have any authority or any power to appoint people to the advisory council. They, of course, can always recommend to the board, but the board would make the decision to appoint them to this council. And then if you are appointed and we're not a past president, you can serve a maximum of 10 years. I think right now we have about 24 members on the council. We always like to keep a few seats open to accommodate any new ex-presidents coming off. And of course, anybody who has that great wealth of knowledge we would want on there. Or the International Children's Fund. This was set up so that we could help children outside of where a tent is. Doesn't necessarily mean we don't have boots on the ground, but if you hear of a child in Arizona where we don't have a Variety tent and we want to try and do something for that child, this is the fund that can do. US Association could probably do that too. We have, these members of the International Children's Fund are appointed by the board, minimum of 6, maximum of 12. And the committee determines who is going to run that committee. And then that person, the president, sits on our board. So Rachel Gaskell is the new appointed head of VICF, and she is working on making some adjustments so that this committee is a little more active to determine how they can spend their money. They are also responsible for raising the money in which they can use spend on projects. So right now, if you're curious, we have about $250,000 in the VICF fund, And so those funds can be used to help children outside where there is a local variety tent. And you might hear more from them in the near future. Okay, so just to recap, the board is made up of these categories: the president, the at-large directors, the chair of each of the regions, the chair of the advisory council, and the chair of the International Children's Fund. And all these directors, hopefully no more than half of the board, will take their new seats at the close of the annual general meeting. And any board member on international level can serve a maximum of 8 years. And the clock started when this constitution was voted in. So you might say, wait, Nancy, you've been on the board a lot longer than 8 years. That's true. But because the 8-year limit, I would have not been able to serve, which would have been fine too. But we decided to start the clock with the voting in of the new constitution. And so any board member that was on the board at that time would need to step down in 2023. Okay, so it's important that we keep new blood coming in so that there isn't ever a fully new board with no historical reference on the topics being discussed. Okay. Failure is just a way for our lives to show us we're moving in the wrong direction, that we should try something different. And I put this here because, you know, the Constitution was voted in with regions. And if they're working, great. And if they're not working, okay, we tried it. It's showing us it's not working. Let's move in a different direction. But anyway, now we're going to go into exactly the purpose of the regional councils, the purpose of the advisory council, and what the International Children's Fund does. So I'll keep moving forward. So the regional councils, the objectives and obligations of the regional council are these: to promote variety strategic plan, to encourage and facilitate any new tents or new regions or associations, to act in the best interest of all of the tents in their region, to support the tents in the region, whether they're new or struggling or even successful, and to advocate for the tents in the region to Variety International, and then to liaise with the Variety International Children's Fund on anything they might want to do in your region. So any questions on the regional council? Okay. The advisory council, to provide advice and assistance to the directors of Variety International in anything that the Variety International Board requests. Again, this is our historical knowledge. People have been in Variety for years and years and years, and we want to be able to tap into their knowledge. So the current projects that they're working on is they want to honor the past. They've decided that they want to develop a legacy circle to honor those people who have been instrumental in moving Variety International forward. And so they are determining right now what that criteria would be and how to move forward with inducting people into this circle. And there probably will be a limit on how many can be voted in each year. The second thing we've asked them to do is help us collect our history. If you were part of the presentation that Stacy gave, some of the milestones were in there, but we'd like to fill in all of the milestones, not even including when each tent was established and what are the big milestones for each of those tents. So we've asked our database of historical figures to kind of help us fill in those blanks. Okay. Country associations. The Constitution does give the board the authority to create additional associations. Part of the reason the associations were started before the regions were, so they were well established when the regions were added. And a lot of the reason for the associations was to help coordinate the efforts of the tents in that country. US has 22 tents, and Gold Heart is one of the major programs that they coordinate and handle for the US tents. And that is probably what was the inspiration to start the association way back in the day. Australia started in a different way. They don't handle Gold Hearts, but Australia started because they felt that there was more that could be done as a group as a whole than individual tents on their own. And they have had great success with corporate partners that help all of the tents across their country. So we are not looking to create new associations at this point in time, but we're always open to whatever the best structure for the organization is. International Children's Fund. Again, this was started to help children wherever there was a need, where there was no boots on the ground or variety tent already established. Some of the programs, so we've raised money for this organization through Beauty with a Purpose, through Miss World. You might have heard the name Julia Morley in the presentation by Stacy. Julia Morley and her husband started Miss World, and they make all of their contestants support a local charity. And of course, they feed a lot of money into Variety International Children's Fund. We also did a fundraiser for a period of time at Cine Europe. That's a big entertainment industry convention, mostly in Barcelona. We have found that that was a struggle because Europeans are not as philanthropic as other areas of the country, and we always struggle with trying to find an honoree. It's not to say that we're not going to keep trying. And then the other thing is, as our international conferences at one of the big dinners, they would do try and get people in the audience to also contribute to BICF over maybe a 10-year period. Some of the programs that have been done, we did an orphans program in Ukraine. This was an organization, this was an orphanage that took in children that they lost a good percentage of children every winter because the kids just didn't have shoes or hats or coats. And it's a simple thing to do to save lives. And so a lot of money was raised and taken to this orphanage. We also did a 5-year health study in Haiti, Club Foot program in South America, and a 5-year program in India with schools and teaching. We are not currently having any out programs, but like I said, Rachel is our new chair of this committee, and she is working with her committee to figure out a way to spend the money and get it back to the kids that need it. Some of the objectives and obligations, again, research potential projects, raise funds and awareness, review the projects if we had any, and then to oversee and manage the funds. I'm not afraid of storm, for I'm learning how to sail my ship. Isn't that true? That's variety for me. I'm always learning, always checking out what to do next. Okay, so our next area is membership, meetings of members, and membership dues. So our constitution requires that we have at least one general meeting every year, and that's called our AGM. It's usually in May. And part of the timing is because we are required as a board to share a report with the members within 6 months of our closing of our fiscal year. Our fiscal year closes February 30th. So the accountability report, as we call it, needs to be delivered no later than the end of May. And then the other requirement is that we must meet within 3 months of delivering that report to the members. So if we deliver the report in March and May is about 2 months later, that's within the 3-month window. So that's kind of how the timing, it's also been tradition. And then of course, there is the ability to call a special general meeting that I can do as president or 75% of the members. And we will likely have one of those called as soon as the task force has progressed on their work to a certain degree. And I would recommend if there is a need for the membership to meet, it's a lot of work to get 75% of them. Another way is to just ask the president to call a meeting, but that's just me. Okay. This is more, I'm going to skip right over this. The Constitution definitely spells out who needs to be invited, where it's going to take place, date, time, etc. With regard to all of that. So all of this is not only in the Constitution, but it is in the original deck if you want additional details. With regard to dues, we collect dues from our membership for these purposes: to run the organization, to protect the international property, protect the brand, promote the brand, coordinate worldwide fundraising programs, disseminate best practice protocols, and share global impact of the organization. We would love to do more promoting of the brand. We would love to do more about coordinating worldwide fundraisers. This is a partnership between the leadership of the organization and the members. We need to collect that annual financial information in a timely fashion in order to be able to roll it up and attract those corporate sponsors. So it's a partnership. We have to work together to make that done. And then if and when we get a corporate sponsor, everybody has to say, yes, I'll participate. Because if we say that we can get 100% of our tents participating, we need to be able to back that up. So the dues are determined by the board. Usually it's 1%. It has been for years, and ratified by the membership. But there is a clause in the Constitution says that if the membership doesn't ratify the dues, that the dues will stay at the current rate. So there's no, we are not trying to change there was one time that I remember the dues were raised to 1.5%, and that was when BI was bankrupt, and it was at our conference in Ireland, I believe. And it was a one-time request, and within a year we were able to reduce it back to 1%. And since then, the BI board has been a lot better at making sure that our funds are managed correctly.
Excuse me, what year was that, by the way?
Sharon, do you remember when we met in Ireland?
2012.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. We do bill on a quarterly basis. I'll just move to the next slide. So the calculation, I just want to make sure everybody understands. So we get your financials. We close the books in September 30th. We get your financials somewhere around February the following year. And so we use the data that we get from those financials to calculate the new dues based on available funds available for distribution. So the dues calculation are from April to March. So half of the year is based on the previous year. So the ones we're collecting now, or the ones that we collected through March of 21, were based on 2019 financials. And the ones that we're collecting now are based on 2020 financials, and that started in April. And I don't know why it says April 2. Okay, any questions on that? So minimum a tent pays is $6,000. All of that is billed quarterly, so $1,500 a quarter. Same with the 1%. It's 1% billed. So 1% of, if you make 800,000 and 1% is 8,000, then you would be billed 2,000 a quarter. Any questions? I found this funny. P.T. Barnum, big circus guy. Money is a terrible master, but an excellent servant. Agree. Okay. So financials, I'm not going to go into a lot. Our treasurer, there's two jobs our treasurer has where that falls into this. One is managing the financials of Variety International, just like your treasurer manages the finances of your tent. The other area that the treasurer is responsible for is rolling up all the figures coming in from the tents and coming up with those annual impact reports. That is the bigger job, obviously, and we are looking for a replacement for the portal. I know last year Neil collected them through an Excel program, and maybe that will continue to work down the line. But it is a lot of work on the treasurer's part in rolling up all those figures so that we can provide you with those impact numbers for the organization. And I think it's always nice that you see, this is what the big organization does, this is what my region does, and this is what my tent does. And when you're going out to find people, they can see that not only do you impact your local community, but there's a lot of work going on by Variety International around the world. So I'm showing this you in the deck because our summary of our worldwide reporting is available through the deck. You also have the accountability report you can access through the deck. It also quotes the Constitution as far as the 6-month report goes. And I just wanted you to make sure, I don't want to spend a lot of time on financials because of course they always change. And this data is already a little old because we're 6 months into our new year or more. But all that information is accessible. And the other thing we provided was our impact report. We haven't received much feedback on that. So if that's helpful, great. If you would rather see it in a different format and want us to do that work for you, happy to do that too. Okay, moving on to the affiliation agreement and the committee structure. So this is the last section I want to go over. We're doing okay on time. Again, the affiliation agreement provides you with the authority to use the intellectual property of Variety International within certain guidelines. And it is under review by the task force, and it has also been under review by Variety International. It came up for renewal in 2020, and the board was prepared to review it and look at it, and then COVID hit and everything pivoted. So that got dropped in level of priority. It's still important. It did auto renew after 5 years, and we are looking to have a new version of that before the next 5 years. Without further ado, let's go into that. You can find a generic basic agreement through this forum. We also have scanned in all of the signed agreements from any of the tents around the world. So if you want your signed copy, we'd be happy to forward that to you. And like I said, it's currently under review by our task force. Some of the obligations by Variety International, again, I'm going to hit the highlights. I'm not going to read the paragraphs. We're responsible for managing the brand. We also provide management and administrative services to the tent. We promote, hopefully, partnerships and promotions. Again, we struggle with this since we're still trying to pull all the information together, and financial support, meaning we look to roll up all of the figures. And you can say in the agreement, we look to do that both semi-annually and annually. We currently are only doing annually. We haven't figured out a way to do that twice a year since it's a lot of work just to collect it the one time. The obligations of the tents, your organizational status. We're asking that you make sure that you are always meeting whatever the local requirements are for your nonprofit status, that you comply with any laws that are required in your local jurisdiction, whether that is your city, your state, your country. We also provide a limited license. We really don't want you to sub-license it out, but you have a little bit of leeway there to help with your partners to do that. Quality control to maintain the quality of the brand, to always promote the goodwill of Variety International, and protection of the rights in your local jurisdiction. So if you find somebody, if you come across something that is wrong or should be corrected, then we're asking you to please bring it to our attention if we've missed it. And then term and termination, as you can say, the agreement was originally for 5 years, and this was originally sent out in 2015, and so it auto-renewed in 2020. Obviously, notices, ownership, all part of the agreement. Recording, making sure that you keep correct records, whatever is required of your nonprofit status in your local jurisdiction. You conduct programs and activities that further the purpose and objective of Variety International, and you vote and participate in the overall organization if you're attending, and you participate in the governance and the leadership of this organization. Any questions? I know I went over that really quickly, but it is under review, and I'm happy to spend more time on it if you feel it would be beneficial. Learn the wisdom of compromise, for it is better to bend a little than to break. And I have to say that this Constitution was a compromise between many different varying thoughts on how we should be organized. Okay, we're going to go into our committee structure now, and we do have quite a few committees. As I indicated, we do have 8 committees, of which under fundraising, we have 4 subcommittees. We have Gold Heart, Golden Link, Oville World, and Hometown Heroes. Hometown Heroes is becoming Hometown Champions. And those in North America, which I think is the majority of those on this call, already are very familiar, I think, with Hometown Champions. So this committee structure is also under review. The board has heard from the task force that the task force is feeling that we have too many committees. We have organized these committees back in 2019, and a lot of it was trying to divide and conquer the workload, because we understand we always run lean in the office, and we're running even leaner now. So we do require a lot of time of our board members to take a look at various things. So starting with audit, ethic, and risk, this is chaired by our treasurer. They help with the monitoring of the financials, reviewing the 990, checking on our investment funds, etc. I'm sure it's very similar to the committee or whoever heads up your audit and ethics area. So here are some of the tasks that they do. They work on the annual operating budget, financial statements. In California and the US, we have a 990 form. They also review our auditors to make sure they are the right ones at the right price, and anything that the board requests of them. As I said, they also overview our investment strategies. They interact with our banks, assess risk management, review insurance programs on an annual or biannual basis, and review policies that that impact anything to do with the financials or the authority to spend money. Our global strategy and structure committee, although I think structure kind of fell under a different area, but we do have a global strategy committee. There is consideration as we're reviewing how our committee should be structured of maybe this becoming a board committee rather than a separate committee of the board. But right now, when they, again, pre-COVID, November of 2019, the strategy committee felt that the strategy of Variety International, which is different than the strategy of the organization, felt that the board and VI should be spending their time on governance and risk, brand awareness, supporting existing tents to grow, not opening new tents, and figuring out what our relevance is to the tents. What is it that we should be doing for our tents? So the committee sought input from the various tents. Nick was, we originally had a different chair of the committee, but he passed on. And so Nick out of England took on this role, and his research to come up with our strategy is attached in these two addendums. If you want more information on the feedback we received from tents, it's available here. So we did, even though COVID hit, we pursued a strategic plan for Variety International. It did pivot from what our original thoughts were, and it was shared with the organization, all the tents and members at the end of the year last year, so around December of 2020. Again, this is where our focus is, where VI is trying to do. One of our big goals was to introduce a new website, and we should be doing that before the month of September is out. So again, all of these, the access to all of these documents are available through this slideshow, and we encourage you to look at different, if you look more deeply into it, if you have questions or want more information. Legal and governance. This committee, I think, is important because they are the ones that look at the Constitution, all of our governing documents to make sure that they are up to date and correct. They are agreement up until the task force. We're now waiting for the task force back. They review every contract before we sign it. We do try and have an attorney on our board. And if we don't have an attorney on our board, we at least try and have an attorney at the legal and governance level. And of course, they also help us with the reviewing of the work of the board on an annual basis. We do a self-evaluation of the board every year. I think we're on our third year of doing that, and we're about to kick it off now. We also want to ensure that we have a way that we are reviewing the work as well, but mostly the board of directors. Marketing and communication, I think, is another vital committee. And I'll put a plug out here right now. If anybody out there in the tents have a marketing expert that would like to join this committee, we will actually welcome them. Some of the things we're working on, we are working with Sharon on developing a communication calendar so that you know in advance and can help us structure tent talks, town halls, coffee talk. Although this committee really has decided that Variety Tent Talks should be our main brand, and that town halls and coffee talks maybe fit under that brand instead of under Tent Talks versus having a separate brand. And one of the main things that this committee is working on right now is Oville World. Oville World is an app for children ages 2 to 5 or 3 to 6. I'm not quite sure how young children start using apps on a phone. But it is a program that they have inserted in their world, a Variety House, and Charity lives in Variety House, and she has lost her bounce. So she's not able to walk and she's not able to bounce. And so she needs a wheelchair in order to get around Oville World. And this is a way to introduce children of different abilities to the very young. And so this committee is working really hard to oversee the approval of all the assets they're currently developing. And you'll see a little bit more when we get to the fundraising section. But that's one of the goals of this committee. We're also overseeing the launch of the new website. And we will be continuing to ask you guys to submit stories to add to the website and make sure that the website is kept up to date. Operations. So this committee was just looking at how we're structured. This is more where structure fits. But it talks about operationally, how do we open or establish new tents? How do we close a tent? Reviews our policies. It is responsible for creating a crisis management program, which we haven't quite gotten around to due to all the other distractions that we've had. And of course, reviewing the structure of the organization. Some of this is being handled by the task force, and we will wait for the task force outcomes before we move forward on any actions by this committee. Awards, and there are a lot of these awards. So the awards are set up. Well, so this Presidential Citation, Corporate Award, Media Award, Mort Sunshine Award, Young Variety, Innovation, Collaboration, and Heart Awards. The Heart Awards are obviously the gold, silver, and bronze, or I don't know if we even do gold, silver, and bronze anymore. We kind of have equal awards for different categories. These are a lot of awards, and I go through a little bit on each one of them, but this is really a way to acknowledge the tents, the donors, and the supporters, so your volunteers. And if any of these awards need to be tweaked, deleted, added, happy to accommodate that as well. Now, some of these awards are not being given out while we are not meeting in person. Make more sense if we get together and can celebrate together. So the universal criteria for all awards is the tent must be current in all information reporting to Variety International. So again, that goes back to the tent in good standing. In order for you to qualify for any of the awards, you must be a tent in good standing. And you must demonstrate high levels of financial acumen and governance according to your local regulatory requirements. So that is a basic, everybody needs to meet that in order to be able to participate in awards. For the awards, the Presidential Citation is awarded to an unsung hero. Those would be your volunteers. Every tent has the ability to nominate one individual each year to receive this award. This award was awarded last year during COVID, and again we solicited nominations this year for the Presidential Citation, and I believe, Sharon, all those have gone out and everybody's been acknowledged. Second, we have the corporate awards. Again, high level of support from a corporation that not only helps you raise funds or provides funds, but also help promote the brand and your events. Each year, every tent, 44 of you can submit a nomination, and 10 are selected to receive the award. I'm sure exceptions will be made if we have a little few more, but I'm not going to speak for our chair. She can determine that, but the committee can determine that. Again, there's more details on how to apply for that, but solicitations always go out from Variety International. The Media Award acknowledges the promotion media that promotes awareness of Variety's brand, their mission, social impact, and fundraising initiatives. Again, there are 10 media awards given every year. So it's not, I don't know how many nominations we get on average. Sharon, do you know how many nominations we get on average?
About for corporate and media, about 10 to 12.
Okay. So almost everybody gets it. There's a few that may be left out. And again, if and when we're awarding these awards, specific criteria will be provided when we solicit nominations. The Mort Sunshine Award. This is to award tents for excellence in design, content, publication of newsletters, brochures, annual reports, websites, etc. So this is a communication award. It's called Mort Sunshine. He was our former executive director from way back when. And we have involved outside help, like from an ad agency, to help with the judging in this category in the past, so that it doesn't seem like it's only, we're not necessarily professional marketers. So we always try and get some outside help to help with this category. The next one is Young Variety. Not every tent has a Young Variety. Those of you who do not, I would highly recommend it. When Southern California started their Young Variety Award, we could see you can recruit new board members and new passionate people for your cause from this. And they also do a great deal of fundraising and that's a great deal of variety of work helping organizations with their kids. So this is just, again, a tent nominating a Young Variety individual to receive this award. We have the Innovation Award. Anything that's new, built on diversity of income, awareness of variety brand, awareness of what variety does, and is adaptable to other tents. So this award was used this year to award those tents that were able to maintain or exceed their level of fundraising during COVID from previous years. And that was the committee's judgment that this should be awarded. And I believe there were about 7 tents that received this award. So bravo to you guys on that. The collaboration award. Has a tent helped you? Do you collaborate with another tent? Were they exceptional in helping you launch a new program that they were doing in their tent? This is to honor that collaborative spirit between tents. I don't know how long this award has been around, but it's a great way to just kind of encourage everybody to work with each other and learn from each other. And then, of course, we have the Heart Awards. This may change. I know the awards committee is working on the criteria for the upcoming awards this next year. Generally, we are judging the Heart Awards on consistent excellence and growth in all areas over a 3-year period. Obviously, COVID did not allow you to show much growth over that 3-year period. So I'm sure they're going to be taking that into consideration. This award is divided into 2 parts. The first part qualifies the finalists. So again, pension good standing, percentage of growth in net gross and net funds over 3 years, net funds compared to gross funds over 3 years, administrative expenses, amount of total grant value, correct branding, use of media, diversity and sustainability of income, and professionalism of the tent. All of that is taken into consideration to bubble up those 9 finalists. And the finalists come in 3 categories. So the parts that once you qualified and we have our 9 finalists, then part 2 kicks in. Part 1 goes by the wayside. So we don't look at financials. We don't look that this tent earned $5 million and this tent earned 5. We don't compare the financials or any of that other stuff going into part 2. Part 2 is all about the conference when you're at the conference and talking about what you did in this last year. And that is where the finalists are judged and awarded. And then the 3 categories that these are in, tents that earn under $1 million gross income, between 1 and 3 million, and then more than 3 million in gross income. And again, these 3 categories are, so you're competing with tents that are like you. So if you earn less than $1 million, or if you're in the 1 to 3 million calendar, you're only being reviewed with tents in that same category. And these haven't been awarded for, well, going on 3 years now. Well, we did in 2019, so not 20, not 21. So we've missed them for 2 years. Hopefully we'll miss 22 because we're doing it virtually. So 23 will probably be the next time we introduce these awards. Fundraising. This committee was developed when we realized COVID hit. Obviously, our income would be decreasing as yours is. And so we need to figure out where our deficit was and how we as an international board can raise money to cover that deficit. In the past, some of that deficit has been covered by Gold Heart or other programs that bring in outside revenue. But this committee was set up to specifically look at how we can raise funds. And under them is the Gold Heart program, which is very US centric, although it did start in Europe. Golden Link, which was global, although most of it was US, and then Hometown Champions, which is starting in the US, and OVIL, which is an app which fits everybody. So let me go into a few of that. I'm going to skip over this a little bit, but Gold Heart started in 1991. In 99, Paramount took it on and created an in-theater campaign, which helped sales greatly. 2 years later, Disney took it on. Their first year, it was a generic design. The second year, they were told they could design it themselves. And the corporation of Disney decided to variety, the Mickey Arm and Wand icon. And since then, that is also the year that instead of just selling in Southern California, we moved the Gold Heart program across the country. So Disney used their leverage to get AMC on board to sell at all their theaters, Regal on board to sell at all their theaters. Eventually, Carmike came on board, Cinemark's on board. All of that happened. We've had some falter from there, like AMC and Regal are no longer selling at all of their theaters. But that's how the program got launched and started. It has been very successful. One thing to note is the year of 2000, when Disney took on the pin, that was the same year the towers fell. So although the most number of pins were ordered that year, A lot of $2 and $3 went to the firefighters of New York rather than the Gold Heart pin. But here's look at some of the pins in the past. We just finished a successful Boss Baby program, which did better than many people expected. Again, this is just laying it out. All of this is available in the deck, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. I have tons of history on Gold Heart if anybody wants to hear the difference. The one thing on this slide I want to point out is we ask a lot of the studio, especially to support the program here in the US. If the program became hugely successful outside the US, I'm sure we would go to the studio and ask for support in those areas as well. But currently, a studio that agrees to do a Gold Heart program is committing $50,000 to $100,000 in their expertise, their IP, and actual physical production of all of these items to help promote the pin. And I think a lot of tents don't realize that the commitment of the studio is quite large. Okay, moving right along. We are also looking to how we can continue to support and expand the Gold Heart program. Like I know I'm running out of time, so it's not like we're sitting on our laurels and just doing program after program. We are looking to figure out ways that we can increase the program, like including pin sales on online ticket sales, which are growing. Okay, Golden Link. This is a program that came to us when COVID hit. This is a company that produces movie-themed drink cups and popcorn buckets. They were going to start doing safety products during COVID. That would be face masks, things that you can, like, well, safety products. The decks of products that they were doing, a percentage of the sales, again, because it's in a pandemic and these are requirements, they didn't want to look like they were greedy corporation, just take advantage of the situation. They wanted to give back, and they chose Variety to give that money back to. I'm going to skip through this. All of this is in here as far as how that was set up. And I'm going to move on to Oville World. So Oville World is an online gaming platform for the youngest kids. It's like, if you have a small child, this would be the first app that they would look at. And I mentioned a little bit about Charity. Again, all of this is in the deck. This is Charity's house. You can see she has a ramp that goes up into her house. Anybody who purchases the Charity house, the Variety House portion of the app, proceeds of that come back to Variety, and those will go back to the individual tents. These are some of the characters. You can see they don't have legs. So Charity is right here with the art. She's Charity in the wheelchair, and these are her friends and neighbors. These old people bounce. She's lost her bounce. We do encourage you to download the app and just check it out. I don't want to spend a lot of time because I know I'm running out of time. So the next is Hometown Champions. It was Hometown Heroes. As you can see, the logo on the left says Heroes. We understand that this will be rolled out with the new logo and the new name this week. It could, of course, be delayed since I'm not part of that committee. But a lot of this is taking advantage of up-and-coming basketball, hockey athletes that are maybe second, third tier, and getting them engaged before they have their own charities, getting them engaged with Variety based in their hometown, and having them help promote Variety in the brand and what you do locally. So again, there's more information in the deck on this. And the last committee I want to talk about is Human Resources. So this was established maybe a year ago, maybe not quite. And a lot of it was just to handle anything that came up that was of a challenging nature, and also to set up a process in which we can evaluate our executive director. So the committee is made up. The president of Variety International is also the chair of this committee, since she is the one who interacts with the ED most of the time. We invite the vice president, of course, that's vacant right now, to be part of it. And then the treasurer, our treasurer right now does have HR background, and then 2 or 3 other board members that have some type of HR experience and background that can add to this. We will be working, since Sharon is our one and only employee, we will be working with her to set up KPIs for the upcoming year, etc. We also have an employee handbook, which we did circulate through the US. Happy to share it anywhere around the country, but it is very US based and specifically California based. So I'll leave you with this. I want everybody to understand that we all wear multiple hats. We wear our local hat, we wear our family hat, our local Variety tent hat, our country hat, our region hat, our international hat. It's really important. I like this quote. The problem with human beings is we think we can wear too many hats at once. Not possible. It's an outright fashion disaster. I think it's better to wear the right hat at the right time. That's me. And then I have one last quote to kind of end on a funny note. Give me coffee to change the things I can and wine to accept the things I cannot.
Those that wrote the Serenity Prayer, I think I like that one, Nancy.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so that is it. So we did it in an hour. Whew. Any questions I can ask? Thank you for sticking with it. It's not the most interesting, but I think the more we engage, the more we understand how we operate, the better we can influence how we can improve the structure and the leadership. So any questions I can answer? Any thoughts? How I can improve the presentation at 4 o'clock? I'll take it all.
Nancy, I'd just like to say thank you. It is a lot of information, but it's so important, such important information. And I think back to when I came on board, had I even had a recording of a friendly face doing that, much less a friendly face doing that with me in person or via Zoom or something, would have been incredibly helpful. And I think really pulled me into Variety International. So thank you for getting through that tough material. And I'd love to hear what other people think too. Especially.
Amen, Stacy. I agree. Yeah, it is very helpful.
Great. Anyone
Patty,
else?
I'm curious if it's helpful for you being so new.
It's very helpful. It's very informative, and it actually, I'm going to go back and look at more information. It kind of like helps me to focus on certain things that were kind of overlooked.
Well, we realized the deck is 100 slides. My deck was probably 80 because I expanded it, so there's less information on some page, but it is a lot of information, but it should all be there. And we're happy to answer any additional questions that might come up if we haven't explained everything in the deck.